This is our home, Chicago City. For 8 years, Chicago has been regarded as the best city thanks to its rich diversity of culture and innovation. There are many positive sides to the city, like the opportunities for people like you and I. Now, with positives come negatives, but what are the negatives of Chicago?
Where a woman is critically injured after an attack.
16-year-old got out of a car parked in an alley and started
A tragedy on the Blue Line. 4 people shot and killed on a westbound train early.
Investigators say the man stabbed the victim, stole that person's wallet.
The reality is, Chicago has some of the most crime in the Midwest America, and it creates unstable living conditions for thousands of Chicagoans on the daily. What are the causes and patterns to this crime, and what can be done to reduce it? So when we say Chicago has some of the most crime in the Midwest, well, what does that look like? Well, Chicago has been notorious for crimes relating to gang violence, gun violence, and having dangerous neighborhoods. For decades, these issues have created unease for many of Chicago's citizens in many of the city's neighborhoods. It's even gotten to the point where part of the city's own public transport system is avoided, since it has gained a reputation of being sketchy and unreliable in terms of safety, given an extensive history of incidents that took place there. If we take a look at maps that show socioeconomic indicators of Chicago neighborhoods, we start to notice a recurring trend. The southern parts almost always tend to fare worse than the northern parts. This trend is also present in graphs of the city's crime rates by neighborhoods. Now, why exactly are these trends present? I would like to discuss something that was practiced in the mid-1900s that proposes a reasonable explanation, and it is known as redlining. In the 1930s, a group known as the Homeowners Loan Corporation would take a map of Chicago, break it up by neighborhoods, and then in red outline the neighborhoods that they considered to be of higher risk. They would then provide more funding to the neighborhoods they thought were of less risk, while those of higher risk, which were marked in red, would receive less funding, making it harder for them to progress financially and socioeconomically. This is the basis for redlining. If we take a look at a redline map, we see that the same southern neighborhoods were marked in red after being considered high risk, where they then received significantly less funding. This imbalance of funding and resources has made it to where people are more likely to turn to crime when they're struggling with poverty, bad living conditions, and a lack of support and resources. This can explain the many trends we see in the graphs where the south side performs more poorly than the north side in socioeconomic factors. It's also worth mentioning that the downtown area was also marked, which can be surprising because it's known for development and stuff, but this is just mainly because they were considered risky for investments due to old buildings, industrial areas, and less stable commercial properties compared to newer suburbs. So, we understand that a lack of funding for southern neighborhoods created the conditions that exist there today. Well, how exactly do they affect the average person? Why should we care? At 2:45 p.m., January 15, 2022, an 8-year-old girl named Melissa and her mother were walking down the street in the Little Village neighborhood when suddenly a gang altercation unfolded near them and shots began being fired. 2 bullets, originally intended for a rival gang member, went rogue, and in a tragic turn of events hit Melissa instead. On the spot, she succumbed to her injuries. After some investigation and arrests made by CPD, the suspect for the incident turned out to be a 16-year-old boy, along with a 27-year-old getaway driver, and others who were also interlinked. It is sickening that a mother and her daughter can't even go outside in plain daylight without having to worry about being at risk of losing their lives to gang and gun-related incidents. And you can't even draw it down to just innocent people and children losing their lives, when some of these children are the same ones growing up to be the aggressors. A 16-year-old. A 16-year-old. An adolescent old enough to be in a classroom like this, sitting among students like you all. A 16-year-old that could have taken his life in a brighter direction, but unfortunately was raised in conditions where these types of violence are normalized, and grew up around people who treat this violence with casualness and complacence. And this is just one of the many cases we see of crime incidents in the city. It is so disheartening that about half the city of Chicago has to live with the constant worry about falling victim to crime. Something must be done not only to bring light to the conflict, but also to make improvements in the quality of the environment and of the lives of Chicago citizens. I say this because we sit and hear about these tragedies that occur so frequently, but what we forget majority of the time is these misfortunes can occur absolutely anywhere, absolutely anytime, to absolutely anyone. In areas like these, all it takes is being in the wrong place at the wrong time for a tragedy to unfold. Nobody is fully immune. Nobody is safe. Okay, so what can we do to solve this? This is where I'm at some difficulties. I attempted to get in touch with professionals such as David Weisberg and Alex Picaro, but they were unfortunately too busy at the time of contacting them. I began thinking of ways that this issue could be addressed, and I first ran into the idea of gentrification, which has to do with wealthy people moving into poorer areas, increasing the overall value and prices of the area. I at first believed this was a solid approach, but later got to thinking and realized this doesn't exactly reverse the damage already done by redlining. Most people still remain with lower education rates and lower paying jobs, regardless of whether or not rich people move in. And long term, this could even cause displacements across Chicago. If the problem lies in that the people have a lack of resources due to a lack of funding, the replenishment of those funds strictly for the amelioration of these services would provide these neighborhoods with more opportunities to thrive. According to the official CPD website, this can look like more education opportunities and intervention for people who are already involved in crime-related activity. Now, of course, this could slightly lower crime on a surface level, but the whole reason crime has gone to this point is because of systemic issues that have suppressed southern neighborhoods financially. This increased crime in the sense that people have to go to further measures to sustain themselves, and it makes it more likely for people to form gangs as a way to help each other and thrive. And a lot of the time, criminals probably would have taken their lives in a brighter direction had they had the resources to do so early on. Using information from docs.house.gov, some solutions include baby bonds, which are federally managed accounts with money set up for people in poorer areas to be used for education, home, or starting a business. Other things include guaranteed employment and higher minimum wage, which would increase the incentive for people to work and maintain good work ethics, and also increasing the funding for education, medical facilities, and infrastructure. Now obviously this requires a large sum of money, and a proposed way of getting the sum of money is increasing the taxes of the ultra-wealthy, with annual incomes of over $400K. It is through this extra funding that we can provide aid to the southern neighborhoods in attempts to make the conditions easier and more livable for everyone who lives there, which should in turn decrease the incentive for crime and provide a safer environment for everyone. The Windy City may have its ups and downs, but one thing is for certain. All people of Chicago deserve to have equal opportunities to do something great with their lives, and to exist in safe spaces, whether it's going for a walk in the middle of the day, or simply taking public transport somewhere. Crime should not have to be such a common worry in everyday life. It is not the mid-1900s anymore. Redlining should not be having this large of an impact on Chicago, and there are steps that can be taken to reverse its effects as much as possible. And this would not only ensure an improvement in our city's neighborhoods, but also provide equal opportunities to all people of Chicago and to those who will take their place in the future. This is our home, Chicago City. Let's bring it to its best.